haunted lift horror stories. The elevator door slid open with a soft chime. Lorenza hesitated. The office building was silent. Too silent. At this hour, it should be empty. But something felt wrong. She stepped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor. The door shut. The elevator lurched. Then it stopped. The overhead lights flickered. The air turned cold. Lorenza reached for the emergency button, but before she could press it, she saw it. Her reflection did not move. Her breath caught in her throat. Then the elevator began moving, upward. The screen above the doors changed. 10, 11, 12, 13. Her chest tightened. There was no 13th floor in this building. Lorenza had worked late before, but tonight, something felt off. The air in the office was thick, heavy. The usual soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead seemed distant, like a sound coming from another world. By the time she packed up her things, the building was practically lifeless. The long hallway stretched in front of her, dimly lit by flickering ceiling lights. Then she noticed something. The elevator button was already lit. She had not pressed it. Her fingers hovered over the call button, but she hesitated. A soft ding. The elevator arrived. The door slid open. The inside was empty. Her pulse quickened. Slowly she stepped in, pressing the G button for the ground floor. The door sealed shut. The elevator began to move, upward. Lorenza's stomach twisted. She frowned, pressing the ground floor button again. Nothing happened. The numbers on the screen climbed. 19, 20, 21. Her heart pounded. The building only had 18 floors. Her breath turned shallow. The space around her felt smaller, tighter. Then, the lights flickered. For a split second, darkness swallowed the elevator. And in that brief moment, she saw it. Her reflection. But something was behind her. A shadowed figure. A tall, unmoving presence. The light snapped back on. Her reflection was normal. Her hands trembled. She turned sharply. Nothing was there. But the air around her felt wrong. The elevator kept climbing. 22, 23, 24. A sharp chill slid down her spine. Her body screamed at her, "This is not right." Then it stopped. The door slid open. A long hallway stretched before her. It looked identical to her office floor, but it was not. The walls were a dull, lifeless gray. The carpet appeared damp, stained with something dark. The air was stale, as if this place had been sealed away for years. Lorenza did not move. Then she heard it. A faint, rhythmic creaking, like a chair, rocking, back and forth. The sound came from down the hallway. Her breath caught. She should not move. She should not step out. But her feet, they moved anyway. The hallway stretched longer than it should. Each office door she passed was slightly open, revealing only darkness. The creaking sound grew louder. At the very end of the corridor, one door stood wide open. A dim, flickering light spilled from inside. Lorenza's body shook. Her mind screamed at her to turn back. But something drew her in. Inside the room, a desk sat in the center, and on it, an old computer monitor. The chair in front of it rocked back and forth, but no one was sitting in it. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Then, the screen lit up. Footage began to play. Her eyes widened. It was the elevator, her own reflection, inside. But then, something moved behind her. A tall, dark figure. Lorenza's heart pounded. The thing in the video stepped closer to her reflection. Then, her reflection moved. But not in real time. Not with her. It turned, slowly, unnaturally, and it stared directly at her. The real Lorenza had not moved. Then, a breath. Right behind her, cold, slow, and then a whisper. "You should not have stepped out." Her blood froze. She spun around. Nothing. The chair had stopped rocking. The monitor, black. A ding. The elevator. Lorenza ran. Her legs felt heavy, the hallway stretching farther and farther. The doors along the walls blurred into darkness. She reached the elevator just in time. The doors began closing. She lunged inside, slamming the G button. The door sealed shut. For a moment, silence. Then, the elevator plummeted. Lorenza's body lifted off the floor. The air rushed past her, pressing against her chest. The lights flickered violently. The mirrors warped. Her reflection twisted. Then, silence. The elevator stopped. The door slid open. Lorenza's breath came in shaky gasps. She was on the ground floor. The lobby was empty. The air was still. Her hand shook as she pulled out her phone. One new message. Unknown number. Next time, do not step out. A sharp chill slid down her spine. Slowly she turned toward the elevator doors. Her reflection stared back, and standing right behind her in the glass, the shadowed figure. The door slammed shut, and the elevator began moving. But this time, it did not stop. Haunted Lift, horror story number 2. The moment Lila stepped into the elevator, she felt it. Something was wrong. The air was off, heavy, stale, too still, like the space had been waiting, expecting her. A slow, uneasy breath left her lips as she pressed the button for the ground floor. The door slid shut behind her, slower than usual, as if the elevator itself resisted closing. She glanced up at the panel. The numbers flickered, struggling to stay lit. A soft hum filled the space, vibrating beneath her feet. Then, a tremor. Not violent, not enough to knock her off balance, but enough to make her feel it. The elevator did not move. Her pulse stuttered. A glitch, maybe. It was an old building. It had to be that. She reached out and pressed the button again. Nothing. A thick silence filled the space. Unnatural, suffocating. Then, a whisper. Software close. Too close. Do not turn around. The breath caught in her throat. She could not have heard that. She had to be imagining it. The isolation, the stress from work. Her mind was playing tricks on her. But then, it came again. Do not turn around. The voice was not mechanical, not distorted like a malfunctioning speaker. Number it was human, and it was right behind her. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the emergency button. She pressed it. Again, again, harder, nothing. Her heartbeat pounded against her ribs. The walls of the elevator felt smaller, closer, as if the space itself was tightening around her. Then, a sound, a slow, deliberate scraping, fingernails dragging along metal behind her. Her breath hitched. The air turned ice cold, like something had seeped in from another place, something that should not be here. She did not turn. She could not, but she felt it now. A presence, something, someone, standing just inches from her back, close enough that if she moved, if she even breathed too deeply, she might touch it. The lights flickered. For a fraction of a second, the elevator's control panel reflected back at her, and in that brief, terrible moment, she saw it. A woman, standing behind her, dressed in tattered black clothing. Her hair, long and tangled, clung to her face in damp strands. Her eyes, hollow, sunken, empty. Then, darkness. A crackle erupted from the intercom. A sharp, ear-piercing noise, that sent a jolt through Lila's spine. She sucked in a breath. Security. It had to be. Someone had to be watching. They had to get her out of here. But then, a voice, not from a security guard. You should not have come alone. The same whisper, the same voice, but this time, it came from above her, the ceiling. A sob rose in her throat. Her body was locked in place, paralyzed by terror. Then, cold fingers, brushing against her arm. She screamed. Her body jolted forward as she slammed her hand against the buttons. All of them, over and over, desperate. The panel flickered, struggled. Then, the elevator moved, but not normally, not smoothly. A violent, erratic descent. It was dropping too fast. The cables above groaned, the sound deep, unnatural, strained, like something was pulling them apart. The lights above dimmed to a dull, flickering glow, casting long, stretching shadows that did not make sense. The elevator screeched to a stop. The doors did not open. Lila pounded on them. Help! Somebody, please! I am trapped! No response. Her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. The silence was unbearable, loud in its absence of sound. Then she saw them, the walls. She had not noticed before. Scratches, deep, jagged carvings into the metal. 4 words, over and over. Do not turn around. Lila's stomach twisted. Her legs felt weak. This had happened before. A soft, wet drip hit the back of her neck. She shuddered. Number no, no, no. She clenched her eyes shut, her body shaking, her breath uneven. Then the reflection in the panel flickered again. She saw it. The woman was still there, and this time she was smiling. Lila let out a choked sob, pressing herself against the doors. Anywhere but here, anywhere but behind her. Then hands, cold, unyielding, wrapping around her shoulders. A violent yank. She screamed. A desperate raw sound, as she thrashed, kicked, fought against the invisible force. The elevator plummeted. The air was knocked from her lungs. She was weightless, falling, but she was not alone. Something else was in there with her. Something was falling with her. Then, blackness, silence. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on the floor. The elevator was still. The doors open. She gasped, her chest rising and falling in frantic, uneven breaths. She scrambled to her feet, nearly collapsing from the weakness in her legs. The lobby stretched before her, empty, no security, no staff, no sounds except the quiet hum of the building. She turned. The elevator stood open, waiting, empty. No scratches, no flickering lights, no sign of what had just happened. It looked normal. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Her body swayed, dizzy with confusion, with fear, with the horrible nagging sense that something was wrong. Maybe it had been in her head. Maybe. Then she saw it. A single wet footprint, not hers, from inside the elevator. Lila did not stop to think, did not stop to breathe. She ran. And after that night, she never stepped into an elevator again. She avoided them at all costs. But sometimes, when she was alone, when the air turned suddenly, inexplicably cold, she still heard the whisper, "Do not turn around." Haunted Elevator Horror Story number 3. Delphine pressed the lobby button and leaned against the cold metal wall of the elevator, exhaling slowly. It was late, too late. The office was silent, unnaturally so. The hum of the fluorescent lights above flickered once, twice, before settling into a dim, unsteady glow. She rolled her shoulders, exhaustion weighing down on her. Just a few more seconds, and she would be outside, free. The door slid shut with a soft chime. The elevator was supposed to go down, but it moved up, Her brows knitted together. That was not right. She pressed the ground floor button again. Harder this time. Nothing. The numbers above the door ticked higher. 3, 4, 5. A cold unease curled in her stomach. She worked on the 12th floor. There was no 13th. So why was the panel displaying 13? The elevator dinged softly. The door slid open, and she saw something she was never supposed to see. Something waiting for her. Something that smiled. Delphine had never liked elevators. There was something about their tight, enclosed space that made her feel trapped, vulnerable. But tonight, she had no choice. The stairwell was far too long, and after hours of overtime, her legs felt like lead. The office was eerily empty, the way it always was after hours. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the dim overhead lights, the ghostly outlines of empty cubicles, the stillness of abandoned desks. The elevator door slid open. She stepped inside, pressing the lobby button. The door shut smoothly. Then, the elevator moved up. Delphine frowned. She pressed the lobby button again. Nothing. The metal groaned as the numbers kept rising. 5, 6, 7. Her heart beat faster. There was no reason to go up. The upper floors of the building were under renovation. Empty. Abandoned. Yet, the numbers continued to climb. 10, 11, 12, then 13. A soft ding echoed in the elevator. Delphine's breath hitched. There was no 13th floor. The building skipped it. The doors slid open. A hallway stretched before her, long, dimly lit, and wrong. Her pulse pounded in her ears. The walls were the same color as the lower floors, but something was off. The paint peeled in jagged strips, revealing something dark underneath. The carpet was stained, as if something had seeped through long ago. The hallway was too long, much longer than the building should allow. And at the very end, someone stood there. Delphine's breath caught. A woman, still, silent, watching. The elevator doors remained open. The usual safety mechanism that forced them to close was not working. The woman did not move. Then she smiled. Delphine slammed the closed door button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. 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 The woman took a step forward. The lights in the hallway flickered, casting long, unnatural shadows. Another step. Her movements were jerky, unnatural, as if she was just learning how to walk. Delphine's fingers stabbed the control panel, pressing every button in sight. The elevator did not move. The woman's head tilted to the side, her neck bending too far, her smile widening. And then, she ran. Delphine's breath hitched. She slammed her fists against the panel. The lights in the elevator flickered violently. The door slammed shut, and the elevator plummeted. Her stomach lurched. The walls groaned. The control panel sizzled, and the air turned ice cold. She clutched the railing, her pulse hammering in her throat. Then, the elevator jerked to a stop so violently, she stumbled forward, smacking against the wall. The emergency light bathed the small space in a dull red glow. The numbers above the doors flickered erratically. Then, a sound, a whisper, right behind her. Delphine froze. She could feel it. Something was standing there. A cold breath ghosted against the back of her neck. Slowly, she turned to the mirrored wall. Her reflection stared back at her. Just her. But then, a second figure slowly materialized. The woman from the hallway, standing right behind her. Delphine's breath hitched. The woman's face was all wrong. Her mouth stretched too wide, her eyes hollow, her skin cracked like old porcelain. The woman tilted her head, her mouth moving as if whispering directly into Delphine's ear. But there was no sound. Then, her hand reached out. Delphine spun around. The elevator was empty, but the reflection, the woman was still there, smiling. Delphine lunged at the control panel, pressing the alarm button. The sound screamed through the small space. The reflection's smile vanished. The lights flickered violently, and then the elevator slammed into the ground floor with a deafening crash. Silence. The door slowly slid open. Delphine stumbled out, gasping, her body trembling uncontrollably. The lobby was empty, normal, as if nothing had happened. Her reflection in the glass doors showed her own face, shaken, pale, alone. But just before she turned away, the reflection of the elevator doors behind her remained open, and inside, a figure stood in the darkness, watching, still, smiling. The elevator door slid shut. Delphine ran, but the whisper still echoed in her ears. "See you soon."